So, where did natural hygiene come from? That's a very interesting question, because if we go back, we can start from Pythagoras, we can go to Leonardo da Vinci, but ultimately let's reduce it down to contemporary times, so like 1800s, which was the revival of natural hygiene, which is what this video is going to get into. And I think the first notable person we should mention is Dr. Jennings. And so what Dr. Jennings did was basically he, in his practice, didn't like giving medicines, and he often observed that in his many years of practice, he was distressed to see his patients become worse from the drugging modality. His patients died and became chronically afflicted. By the way, so he was seeing how his patients were being poorly affected by it. It was far more effective drugging less and less. So physicians, as they got older, they would drug less and less. So then he quit prescribing drugs altogether, and he found that this was miraculous. So in 1822, at age 34, Dr. Jennings gave his patients placebos with instruction to take them at specified hours of the day with a glass of water. His prescription was that no food could be taken or else the pills would not work. His patients were ordered to do this for a number of days. Under Jennings' new modality, his patients invariably became well, while other physicians lost patients by the graveyard full. His thrived. The ailing flocked to him far and near. He called the system the no-drugging system. He didn't reveal it in the beginning, right? He kept it as a secret. He called these treatments the leave-alone method. And while professing to dispense pills of an unnamed composition, they came to be regarded as pills with magic curative properties. So, isn't that hilarious? The first guy who really pioneered natural hygiene gave people placebo pills and then told them to only drink water because these pills only work if you are fasting, right? If nothing else is going in and disrupting these pills. So make sure you drink just water. And that in fact, it was nothing. So his sounds very much like do nothing farming, right? Natural farming. It's a no drugging system, the leave alone method. That's what he called it. So I just find that absolutely hilarious. Now, Dr. Jennings, to his credit, saw disease not as an attack from some malevolent entity, but as lowered vital energy or vital energy redirected to other purposes. In essence, he was correct, but his explanations were quite formative, for it remained for successors to build upon the foundations he built. So I'm jumping around here. Now, before I go into the other people that were before that, I want to jump straight into Florence Nightingale. She was kind of like the one to revolutionize nursing. And get this, all you nurses out there. So, her daring on the battlefields of Eastern Europe still draws her admiration for the courage of her convictions. The British were fighting the Russians, and more soldiers were dying behind the battle lines than on them. The physicians and their treatments were killing off the wounded and ailing faster than the Russians. When Florence Nightingale arrived on the battle scene, she really took charge despite the physicians. What she did was a very simple thing. She went to the rooms of the wounded and ailing and opened the windows for fresh air. She would not permit drugs. She gave the patients water, which was against medical policy at the time. She rejected heavy feeding and, in fact, for many, any feeding at all. Being confined to a battlefield hospital had been a death sentence before. Now almost all the wounded and sick became well speedily. It's all history, and Florence Nightingale became famous because of her tremendous success employing the mere rudiments of hygienic methods. This is all the more phenomenal when you consider that Miss Nightingale lived in a medical age and in a man's world. She defied the medics and won, and the men. She was truly a pioneer hygienist. The world, despite its poverty on the health scene, is still richer for having her amongst our forebears. So, people getting shot, wounded, whatever, getting sick, and they're coming back being treated in these medical hospitals, but they're dying more. Basically, it's a very low chance of surviving if they come to the hospital. So they're dying in the droves when they're, being pulled out for being injured or sick or whatever. And so all she does is open up the windows, give them lots of water, because at that time it was against medical policy, go figure, to give the patients water. And so fresh air. Oh, and she stopped the drugs. So she stopped drugging them. She did not permit drugs. And then she stopped the heavy feeding, and sometimes, in some cases, stopped feeding at all. So she fasted them, she gave them water, she stopped giving them drugs, and she opened the windows to give fresh air. Isn't that a breath of fresh air, folks? There you have Florence Nightingale, a champion nurse who changed the course of medicine or nursing altogether. A woman who beat the men and the medical prevailing medical industry at the time. It's just fascinating once you go into this stuff, folks. I don't know why I was holding on to this for so long. This had to come out. So I'm going to go, that's pretty much the two most notable cases in my opinion. But I'm going to go a little further. So there was also Dr. Graham. He was a Presbyterian preacher. In 1830, during the temperance movement, he lectured at Philadelphia on the psychological evils of alcohol. So he was outspoken on that. He became acquainted with teachings of a vegetarian group who abstained from animal foods and products. And so during the cholera epidemic of 1832, Sylvester Graham rose to fame. He literally took on the whole medical fraternity of New York City and the interests supporting the medical system. So, of course, there's so many epidemics here today. Pick your epidemic that you want to compare. While the medical men were advising New Yorkers to abstain from fruit and cook their food thoroughly, Dr. Graham was advocating eating more fruits in the raw state. He advocated open windows, more light, fresh air, and other helpful measures which were contrary to medical teachings. It is noteworthy that those who followed Dr. Graham's teachings were not affected by the cholera epidemic, whereas those who followed medical bidding died wholesale. So again, he was just telling you to do the most obvious, commonsensical things. What a shame, huh? So effective was Dr. Sylvester Graham in his lectures and writing that books and magazines blossomed presenting the Graham system. The first health food stores came into sell foods which he advocated, so on and so forth. So unlike Dr. Jennings, which was the number one guy I presented, the number one guy was kind of more concerned with reversing people after they were ill. Well, this Sylvester Graham was concerned with stopping people from getting ill in the first place altogether. So, putting in the health building activities from the get-go, from the start. The next guy that was notable is Dr. Russell Thacker Trowell. What an interesting name. He brought the hygienic system to a standard that could thoroughly challenge the medical system. So he had the lecture in the Smithsonian Institute to some of the nation's highest dignitaries in 1863, the title of the lecture being The True Healing Art. His number one point was that the medical system is entirely false, that it is untrue in philosophy, absurd in science, in opposition to natural principles, contrary to common sense, disastrous in results, and a curse to humanity. Whew! This guy was on fire. He was spitting fire and cooking. And that number two, the hygienic system is true, that it is in harmony with nature, in accord with the principles of vital organic existence, correct in science, sound in philosophy, in agreement with common sense, successful in results, and a blessing to mankind. And some other notable mentions here were, again, Florence Nightingale, Mary Grove, Harriet Austin, Susanna May Dodds, Ellen White, and Louisa May Alcott, the famous author whose brother became an MD and a hygienic professional. Let's see, and Ellen White, she was she founded the Seventh-day Adventists. The Seventh-day Adventist founder was a hygienist. Let's see, I don't know if I didn't mention some of these other names. Mary Gove, Susan Nichols, Linda Burfield Hazard. So all these great women also championed natural hygiene. But to sum up, the revival and the origins of the new kindling of the fire of natural hygiene that was eventually put out by germ theory, unfortunately. So as hygiene was expanding and people were saying, hey, this makes sense, this is commonsensical, the industry, the deep state, whatever you want to say, the dark forces said, germs are the problem. Stop being responsible for yourself. Blame it on the germs. Take the antibiotics. Blah, 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 blah. Whatever, right? Instead of saying, no, your body has the complete and innate ability to heal itself. It doesn't need anything outside of itself to heal itself. And at the same time, we have to take responsibility for cleaning the inside of ourselves. That's what real natural hygiene is about. That's what the terrain model is about. Is that the terrain, which is the space and the state inside the body, the cleanliness inside of the body, is what determines whether one is sick or one is not sick. It's not some random particle out there, which the particles out there may have some effect. Like if there's pollutants in the air, that does have some effect on you. But this magical germ that, if it touches you, it's like cooties. It ain't it. We're not buying that stuff anymore, guys. So, again, to sum up, how amazing that Jennings reduces everything, gives people a placebo pill, and says only water, nothing else, or else these magic pills don't work. And then the revolutionary of nursing, Florence Nightingale, saying, stop the drugs, open the windows, bring in some fresh air, stop the overfeeding, give them the water that's against medical policy, and the British troops are recovering at God's speed. So, and in fact, the speed at which God meant for us to heal, because we're just so good at blowing each other up and blowing our own body parts up and causing inflammation and lymphatic stagnation all over the body. God can't keep up because we're such fuck-ups. And all we had to do was common sense and leave the damn body alone. So there you have it. There's the origins, the more contemporary origins of natural hygiene, and really how commonsensical and simple it is, and how stupid the dark side is, the dark forces are. There you go.